So I'm a Protestant, but a little over a year ago, I attended a Catholic men's group for months, and recently I made a video describing my experience and some of the things that I learned with the goal of trying to promote healthier and more productive dialogue between Catholics and Protestants. And much to my surprise, it has become by far the most popular video that I've made to date. I have absolutely loved the conversations that it has sparked with its over 1,000 comments so far, which truly blows my mind. And one of the most common pieces of feedback that I received, besides enough book recommendations to fill a small library and a small army of people telling me to subscribe to Lizzie Answers, was that I should attend a Catholic Mass. Now, I love trying and learning new things, and it seemed like good advice given the kind of videos that I make, so I decided, yeah, let's do it. In addition, I'm honestly just so grateful for all of your encouragement and support on that video. So taking a piece of your advice and putting it into practice as a gesture of goodwill and gratitude and to say, hey, I'm listening, seemed like the least that I could do. Okay, now the first matter is figuring out which church to go to. I live in downtown Chicago, so there's really no shortage of options. There's Catholic churches all over the place, and I really wasn't sure which one to pick. Now, initially, I was thinking that I'd go to an Eastern Catholic church, and that's in no small part because some of my favorite Catholic YouTubers, like Fradd and Trent Horn, are of that persuasion. So I started with a quick Google search of Eastern Catholic churches in Chicago. And there were several, but one stood out because it was both really close and the pictures looked really beautiful, and that was St. John of Cantius. Okay, so quick point of clarification. It turns out Google kind of lied to me. Thanks, Google. St. John of Cantius is actually not an Eastern Catholic church. It is a Roman Rite church. But I figured that out after I'd already RSVP'd, and like I said, it's close, it's beautiful, so I figured I'll go with it. Unfortunately, for an indecisive person like me, that wasn't the final decision I had to make. Actually, with COVID-19 going on, it turned out that you have to RSVP to a church service. And then I realized there's more than one kind that they do, which led me to more Googling because I had no idea the difference between extraordinary form and ordinary form, and I saw some were in English and others didn't have a language next to it, which was a little confusing. And initially I thought, well, I speak English, so I'll go to an English one. But then it turned out, schedule-wise, that I wanted to go on a Saturday, and the only options for Saturday in the morning were extraordinary form, and then in the evening, anticipatory. And I thought, okay, extraordinary form, I did a little Google, that's going to be in Latin, but I guess that's like going all in. Plus, a lot of people had told me, try a Latin Mass. And like I said, that's about as far from my evangelical upbringing, so I thought, this should be interesting. Now, I'm sure at this point there's going to be people in the comments who might say, oh, you picked the wrong church, go to this one, or oh, you picked the wrong type of service, go to this one. And look, that's cool. I might have picked the wrong one, but you got to start somewhere, right? All right, there was just one final complication between me and going to Mass. And this one might feel a little silly, but I literally had no idea what to wear. So I hopped on Google and Googled what to wear to Catholic Mass, because growing up I went to a church where I dressed like this, and I figured that might not quite fly. So thanks, internet, I figured out, I think, maybe what to wear. Fun fact about me, I'm about as chill as they come. Very few things stress me out, but I really, really hate being underdressed. That probably says something deep and dark, bad about my soul, but there you have it. All right, now that I'm a little better dressed, I think, time to head to Mass. that was really interesting. I'm going to drive back, probably change out of this, and then we'll talk about some of my thoughts. Alright, I'm back. I'm in far comfier clothes. And I want to talk about that experience because it was really interesting for me as a Protestant. And if you've been following along with this channel, or if you picked up on what I said at the beginning, I've been around the Catholic Church, specifically through that Catholic men's group, and I've listened to lots of Catholic thinkers, mainly Catholic apologists, but I hadn't really been in a Catholic Mass, at least since I was really little and don't really remember it. And going in, I was really excited to see what is this going to be like. Like I said, I love trying new things, and I have a lot of interest in the Catholic Church. I just like learning about the history of it. And so getting to go to this absolutely beautiful church, I mean, if you didn't pick it up from the videos, and I'm sure they didn't do it justice, it is stunning in there. And so I was really excited to see it. One of the first things that struck me when I went in is just how intentional and how beautiful the architecture was. I mean, it immediately draws your eyes up to the grand ceiling where you see all of these images of the apostles and of Christ, and your eye goes down all the way to the end where they have this beautiful setup there where the altar, I hope, if I butcher any Catholic terminology, forgive me, I'm a Protestant, but where they have like the Eucharist and everything. And I mean, the architecture, it really, it does something to you. And I can imagine just how important that has been for the Catholic Church. I mean, when you think through history and the so many years that the vast majority of the population was illiterate, having these centers of worship that simultaneously felt like a fortress, like the world couldn't get in there, but also just like a place of worship, had to have been very formative for people. And all of these images of Christ, and I mean, it was a really powerful experience seeing that, and I loved seeing it. It's not something I'm used to, and so that was just the first thing that caught my attention. The second thing that I noticed was, while there were a lot of people out talking on the steps before Mass and really had like a nice atmosphere, it seemed like a lot of people knew each other, once you walked in that building, it was very reverential. I mean, people were quiet, people were praying, and it really just lended itself to that atmosphere of a place to pray. And I'm chronically early to everything, so I got there pretty early, and it was nice to be able to just sit there in the back and have some quiet time to pray and reflect and think. And like I said, both the way the people treated it and just the effect the building had on you really lent itself well to that. So if you're Catholic, you're probably familiar with how a Catholic service goes, so I won't go super long, but for my predominantly Protestant audience, I'll give you a brief overview of what the service was like. Now, there are religious orders that live there, so there was a lot of men before the service that were doing some readings, and I don't know exactly what the schedule was for that, but that was very interesting, lots of people praying. And then when it was time for the service to start, there were some bells rung, and the priest, even though it was extraordinary form, which was predominantly in Latin, he did start with an opening in English, and there was a reading from the Gospel of John, and the priest was talking about the connection of the heart of Mary and the heart of Jesus. He was talking about the Feast of the Immaculate Heart, and I didn't fully pick up on just why that was, but it was a very well done homily, I guess, if you will. And again, forgive me for the terminology, but and he spoke about their connection and just the pain that Mary experienced in watching her son die, and it was very nice. It was very well done, very short, much shorter than any like Protestant evangelical sermon I was used to, but that kind of got the service going. And then from there was a lot of time of silence, and that was the last time, for the most part, that the priest was actually facing the congregation. For the rest of it, he was facing away from us, or I guess with us, you could say, facing in the same direction. And it was interesting in that what he was wearing had a giant cross on the back of it. So it was, again, just powerful imagery as we're all looking in the same direction, and we're looking at Christ and the cross. And from there was a lot in Latin that I didn't fully understand, and I was also in the back, so it was a little hard to hear, but it really went from that beginning, just opening, to a centering on the Eucharist, and that was what took up the most of the time. I mean, there was a lot of silence, and there was some kneeling and standing, and some different motions and whatnot, but from there, it really seemed like it zeroed in on communion, the Lord's Supper, the Eucharist, whatever term you want to use there. I know there's some technicalities there, but for the purpose of this video, whatever floats your boat. And I will say something that was really interesting to me that I noted is just how important this was for the service. I grew up in a church where we did communion, I think once every 6 weeks or something. Like, it just wasn't a big part of the service. The church I go to now, mostly in Chicago, does it about every other week. But again, it is by no means like the center of the service, whereas here, it was clearly the center of the service. There was also no music, though I think on Sundays they do have some type of chant. But it was very interesting to see how it is centered upon that. And as a Protestant, I'll say there were several things that I liked about the service. The first thing was the reverence, and I think often in Protestant and evangelical churches, we kind of miss that element. We work very hard to make a church service approachable, and I love that, and I really appreciate that. And we want to make it applicable, and again, I love that and I appreciate it. But there was something beautiful about the reverence here, that people took it very seriously. I noticed I messed up that I didn't kneel before I went into my pew, but just even seeing that and seeing the different aspects and just the demeanor people had in the service, it was solemn in a way, but also just very reverential, and that was powerful for me. Another thing I appreciated was the sense of embodied worship. And I don't think Catholics have the corner on the market on this, but specifically in, again, like the megachurch evangelical circles that I grew up in, a lot of what we do, I mean, there's the emotional side with worship, and then it's pretty much just the intellectual side. And one of my favorite Protestant scholars, James K. Smith, has really critiqued this, in that he says that we as Protestants often work from a bit of a stunted anthropology, that we treat people as brains on a stick, or thinking thingisms, as he says. And he says that, we aim all of our services at giving you information. And I think that when we do that, while the information is good, we often miss the fact that we are shaped by repetition. We're shaped by habit. We often decry going through the motions, but often when we do that, the motions go through us. What we do repeatedly shapes us. And so being in this service and seeing, the kneeling, the standing, the different motions, the all of the things that could seem like just rote ritual, which in some ways they can be. Also, I just had a respect for the formative influence that would have on you as you do that over the years. As simple as kneeling before you get in the pew, like all of this is shaping you. And so if you're a Protestant and that interests you, I would recommend picking up this book, Desiring the Kingdom by James K. A. Smith. He talks wonderfully about developing a more holistic sense of worship that is more embodied. And I think the Catholic Church did that well. However, I'll be honest, as a Protestant, there were things that I both didn't understand and things that I just didn't love, if you will. And this isn't about like who's right and who's wrong, so I'm not trying to give like this glaring critique. I just want to share my experience so that as a Catholic, if you're ever wondering like what would it be like to be a Protestant and walk into my church, well, this is what it was like for me. And so the first thing I will say is that a lot of it was just really confusing. Like, I would love to go back to a service with like a Catholic guide to help me understand what's going on. Why are we kneeling now? Why are we like, I just didn't really get it. And I imagine it would be much more impactful if I could understand some more of it. And along those same lines, while I think there's something really interesting in preserving some of the Latin roots and all of that, and just being a part of a way of doing church that has been going on for so long, while I appreciate, like I said, the ritual and everything, I think it can move to the opposite side. While Protestants can be a little over-intellectual and speak only to our brains, I think the service didn't quite have enough of that it moved to the other side. I could understand, like, and kind of say yes and amen with some of the reformers when they look at it and be like, where's the gospel here? Not that, and hear me please, not that they didn't read from John, and not that it's not, not that it's heretical, but just like, I felt like I could go to this service for years and years and just not really understand the message of the Bible. Now, I have learned a lot from some Catholics. I love interacting with Catholic podcasts and YouTube channels like Fradd and Trent Horn and so many other people that I've mentioned before, and I really enjoy that, and there's avenues to learn. I just didn't feel like the Mass did that. And maybe I'm trying to import something onto Mass it's not supposed to do, and if that's the case, that's fine, I suppose, but it just seems like it would struggle to stand on its own for you to really grow in your knowledge of God. And so, I mean, while you can do that experientially, I just felt that it was a little weak on that side. Another thing that I struggled with a little bit was there was a family in front of me with a bunch of young kids, good Catholic family, like 6 kids or something like that. And I thought back to my experience growing up in church where we had just really engaging kids programs where I learned a lot about the Bible and about who God is in a way that was both like entertaining and educational and just like age appropriate, and it made sense and I enjoyed it and it taught me to love church. And watching them just kind of like fumble around distracted and not really understand what's going on, I felt like there could be something else. Again, this isn't meant as like a judgment or anything like that. It's just saying that it seemed unfortunate for me in a way. Like, I can appreciate having them be a part of it and be a part of the life of the church, but I just also feel like they need something that makes sense to them and helps them understand. And again, maybe I'm trying to get the Mass to do something it's not supposed to do, and I get that, and that's fine. I just think that's putting a lot more weight on the parents to do that, and I think it's putting more weight on the individuals, like I said, to seek out some more of that Catholic teaching. And so while the Mass was great for that, it felt it was at least different, and perhaps as a Protestant importing my evangelical biases, it felt like it was missing some of those things that I really appreciate about church services. But, in conclusion, I really, really did enjoy it. It was a great experience. It was beautiful. It was a place that just seemed very reverent, a place of prayer, a place filled with people that really wanted to be there. I mean, it was a Saturday morning and it was packed, as much as you can be packed when you can only fill like 20% capacity because of COVID. But even with that, it was like standing room in the back. And the way it's centered on the Eucharist was something that was really interesting to me, because I think it's so easy in our evangelical churches, especially mega churches like the churches I've been in and around, to really center around ourselves and the performance and the dynamic speaker and the awesome worship band. And it's easy for the focus to be lost in that way. But there was something beautiful about focusing on the Eucharist, and I really got the sense that was why people were there. Like, that was the climax of the service. That's why they got up out of bed, put nice clothes on. It was to go and do that, and honestly, that makes sense to me. And for them, I don't adopt the same view of the Eucharist, but if I believed that in partaking of the Eucharist I was partaking of the body, blood, soul, divinity of Jesus, like, I can't imagine not wanting to be at as many masses as possible, because like what a privilege that would be. What an incredible thing. If you truly believe that's what's going on, then you should be there, and that's I can see the case for that being the center of it. But I think in the end we do need that emphasis on word and sacrament. So you had the sacrament there, but maybe more preaching of the word would have been something I would have really enjoyed, and maybe making it in such a way that's both accessible and applicable to people right where they are and where an outsider can understand it, like me. But again, that was just my experience. In the end, absolutely enjoyed it. If you have recommendations, you're like, you should go to this type of church. I know some people have recommended after my orthodoxy video, you'd love to see me go there. I'd be open to that. Or you want to see me go to a different style Mass, like, let me know. I want to hear your thoughts. But in any case, thank you so much for watching this video. It was so much fun to make, and if you enjoyed this different style, let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you're new, this channel is Gospel Simplicity, a place where we're passionate about the beautiful simplicity and transformative power of the gospel, the good news about Jesus. We're out to talk about life, Jesus, and the journey of faith in a real, honest, and open way. So if that at all interests you, I'd encourage you to hit subscribe to become a part of what we're doing here on this channel. And to those of you that have already done that, that have been liking, commenting, sharing with your friends, that you've subscribed, like, thank you so much. This channel has experienced a lot of growth in the past month, and it's been such an honor and privilege to get to interact with so many of you. And if I haven't been able to personally thank you for being part of this community, please take this as me saying I am so grateful for you. Until next time, be sure to be on the lookout for more videos, and as always, go out and love God and love others, because truly, above all else, that will change the world. Peace. I love you guys so much. I'll see you next time.